Driving these older performance Hondas reminds me of modern Porsches, where they're just so... Ladies and gentlemen, 1998 Honda Civic Type R EK9 generation. The Civic Type R that started it all. The first Civic Type R. Now, I've driven several examples of more recent generations, the FK8, the FL5, the DE5, Integra Type S as well, which is the same platform as the current FL5. And I want to see how much of that shared lineage and DNA still runs through. Now, while this is the first Civic Type R, it's not the first Type R. There was the NA1 NSX, the first Type R. Then in 95, there was the DC2 Integra Type R, which we did get in the US. You can watch my review of that video linked in the description. And then there was the EK9 Civic Type R, which we never got in the US, but this car is 27 years old, and people have been importing these with the 25-year rule in the US for the last several years. In terms of used market value, if you pick one up in Japan, it's obviously cheaper because then you have to import it yourself and do that whole process. So right around $20,000 after the conversion here in Japan. If you were to get it in the US, running closer to $30K. This is, of course, during Honda's golden era. We're powered by the B16B naturally aspirated inline 4-cylinder engine, making 182 horsepower at 8,200 RPM with a red line of 8,400 and peak torque of 118 pound-feet at 7,500 RPM. When do you see peak torque occur at such a high RPM? It's a very special and characterful little engine. It's also hand-ported and polished. Now, with the Civic Type R of this generation, a few notable differences. Apart from, of course, the most obvious one, the engine, we have weight savings with reduced sound deadening. We have lightweight Recaro bucket seats. This is also based on a seam-welded steel monocoque chassis. You get a special Momo steering wheel with the red Honda badge in the middle, special Type R gauges and floor mats and door cards, and the wheels, of course, as well. Speaking of which, these are wrapped in RE71 RS tires, very narrow section width of 195 millimeters all around. And these are 15-inch wheels. You don't see that very commonly today. The other really cool thing from this era is that we have double wishbone both front and rear compared to the modern Civic Type Rs, which are McPherson strut front suspension and multi-link in the rear. Obviously, there are limitations there. When you see people who are tracking or pushing their cars, they're gonna have a crap ton of camber in the front. But with the double wishbone, not only do you get a more sophisticated geometry that improves ride comfort, but also you don't need to have tremendous amounts of camber because you have that dynamic camber change as the suspension travels up. This gen weighs in just over 2,300 pounds. What a featherweight. Compared to modern Civic Type Rs, those are around 3,200 pounds, 900 pounds more. Now, obviously from a performance perspective, from a lap time perspective, the newer Civic Type Rs and Integra Type S is gonna completely obliterate this car. But I'm not concerned about the spec sheet. I'm not concerned about lap times. I'm concerned about the driving experience. And by the way, big shout out to NRT Rent-A-Car. If you guys want to drive this exact same Civic Type R, then use code JABAL for 5% off your next reservation. And they're located right by the NRT airport. So super convenient when you fly in, hop in your car, and be on your way. Now, as for the interior, the other downside with these older generation vehicles is that they clearly are not as optimized for larger drivers. This was very much so for the Japanese market and the smaller average height of its people. So the seats, I gotta say, they look fantastic, and I'm guessing these are reupholstered. There's no way that after more than 200,000 kilometers, they look this pristine. Maybe just a little bit of wear on this bolstering here, but they look so good. Now the issue is that, first of all, the thigh support ends quite abruptly, and there's a very narrow seat bolstering down here that makes it kind of uncomfortable to just get situated. The back bolstering is actually a lot better, but even the curvature of the seat you can feel is actually designed for smaller drivers. So not the most comfortable place to be, if I'm being honest. But I'm 6'1", 175 pounds. We have a 5-speed manual transmission, special shift knob for the Type R. Now, keep in mind that also ergonomics in older cars are quite different. So there's no telescoping to the wheel, although there is tilt. I do love the special Momo wheel with the red Honda badge, very cool. But as a result, with the ergonomics, Hands are stretched out quite a bit. Seat back is very far upright, not in an optimal, comfortable position. And even the shift lever is quite a bit lower than what you'll see in other cars. And the actual shaft to the shifter is quite a bit longer, which means that as a result, the throws are gonna feel longer because they need to get that shift knob higher up so it's in a more ergonomic position. And in terms of mods, we have mid-end exhaust, Thiel's exhaust manifold, Mugen air cleaner box, Mugen engine mount, endless suspension, and a Cusco LSD. I'm excited to hit VTEC because they specifically told me to be mindful of limiting my VTEC use since it's gonna burn oil, you know, higher mileage engine. They are gonna actually be replacing the engine, but it's been a tease driving this torqueless engine around town without hitting VTEC. There it is. VTEC crossover, second cam, hits it right at 6,000 RPM. And it just keeps revving and revving. Very light car, 2,300 pounds. Incredible. Even the DC2 Type R, which at this point, prior to this review, has been my all-time favorite front-wheel drive vehicle, weighs in at 2,500, which is already so light, and this shaves off another 10% of that weight. One thing that's very interesting though is that this is actually has a longer wheelbase, 103 inches compared to the DC2 Integra's 101. I'm gonna go on easy on this section. It is quite wet. Had a situation with the S15 if you guys saw that review. So the car itself is smaller and lighter than the DC2, but it has a fairly long wheelbase, which is going to help you with stability. Man, this thing has so much more grip than I expected. $8,400 RPM red line. Yes, please. Easy to heel toe, natural ergonomics, even though I'm in a suboptimal position. That's just Honda engineering and attention to detail. Double wishbone suspension, combined with these grippy tires, is giving me so much grip. Completely different experience when you're able to get the car to VTEC. Now, the thing is, there's no torque down low, which a lot of people focus on as a huge hindrance, a huge downside, a huge limitation of this vehicle, and a lot of, you know, Honda performance vehicles from this era. But it's not a bug, it's a feature, because what it does to you as a driver is reward you and encourage you to rev it out. It's a happy little engine, it wants to rev out. Incredible induction note when VTEC kicks in. And with peak torque kicking in so high, yes, it can be frustrating when you're just puttering around town. But the way that it makes you want to drive this harder when you do get to the canyons, when you do get to the mountains, when you do get out on track, it's what you want. You want that experience. You can see snow on the road. Another section that's a bit damp. Now we have hydraulic steering, but this is a higher mileage vehicle. And there is like a little bit of slop to the wheel, that initial turn in. But once you get it turned a bit more, the front end feels pretty direct, quite immediate, very much willing to change direction. And we have hydraulic power steering, so there's actually fantastic feedback through the wheel and even good mid-corner weighting. So you have that dynamic weighting change as you load up the tires. It is a lighter steering rack and a slower ratio, which is, I mean, expected. That's more congruent with cars of the era. But I also think that the medium to lightweight steering rack is actually more congruent with the rest of the car as well, because you have a, you know, a longer throw, lighter manual transmission throw, lighter clutch, lighter brakes. It's all congruent, beautifully so. You don't have to think much when you drive the car because the inputs, they all feel more or less aligned. And there's no torque steer here. That's one of the benefits when you have 118 pound-feet of torque. Now the transmission has these longer throws and there's a little bit of lateral slop here. Still very pleasant to use, especially for a front-wheel drive vehicle that has cable linkages. But the funny thing is that I actually prefer this more than the current gen shifters, and the reason being, you have this slightly more mechanical and also a little bit more resistance between gates. As you go from one gear to neutral to the next, there's a crisper delineation, which is more enjoyable to use. And in the newer FL5, as an example, it's just like, it almost feels like a sim rig, like a simulator, you know, like a video game. Wow, what a car. What a car. Brakes are what you expect from a car of this era, meaning that they're a bit soft, they require a lot of travel. The throttle is not overly sensitive, but it has this beautiful responsiveness. You feel directly connected with that cable throttle to that B16B. And there's a very long stroke to the throttle as well, which gives you a high resolution. There's that VTEC again at 6K. This is what I miss from modern Hondas. You had this sense of theater, and what Honda was doing back then, it was so impressive what they did with the Civic Type R, right? It was punching way above its weight class. They took this econobox vehicle, tarted it up, and it felt so good, better than you would expect. And performance-wise as well, it was punching well above its weight class, keeping up with vehicles that were far more expensive and far more focused. Nice R35s. And modern Civic Type Rs are continuing that legacy from the performance perspective, which is that they punch above their weight class. They can keep up with much more focused and expensive vehicles on track. What they've done is a marvel of engineering. The performance at that price point for a front-wheel drive vehicle is incredible, but there is just so much theater that is completely lost. The engine, as an example, you go turbocharged there, you lose out on the sound, the character, that 8,400 RPM redline, and sure, you get way more torque and way more power, but now you get torque steer, you get a little bit of lag at lower RPMs. It still builds in a pretty linear way, especially compared to other modern turbocharged engines, but nothing like this, like a naturally aspirated engine that howls and has this immediate throttle response and this character. And that VTEC induction note, it's lacking. The steering here, excellent. The inputs are just such a pleasure to use, whereas the modern ones, the E-Pass is mostly dead. And the shifter as well, it's very good by modern standards, but it's nowhere near as pleasant to use, even compared to this older transmission with longer throws. Way more lightweight here as well. 900 pounds. Feels far more dynamic and capable on the canyons. Now again, the actual performance of the modern Civic Type R is going to blow this one away. But this and the DC2 Type R are just, they're top tier front wheel drive vehicles. Now, Kevin Wu, the owner of the DC2 Integra Type R, fantastic guy and a good friend, he did so much work to that DC2 Integra. He refreshed it, did some OEM Plus mods. That thing feels so incredible, so good, so tight. And this one is, you know, it's a rental car. It's 220,000 kilometers, a lot more mileage on it. And while NRT Rent-A-Car does a great job of refreshing their cars, it's not going to be to the same degree as a dedicated owner that has the means to really keep their car in tip-top shape and do an OEM Plus build. So in my mind, that DC2 Type R still edges this one out in terms of driving experience, even though it is heavier by 200 pounds and it still feels very nimble and very dynamic. Remember, it has a shorter wheelbase by 2 inches. But this is just so good. I mean, the heel toe is just natural. There's no learning curve. I mean, the naturalness of driving these older performance Hondas reminds me of modern Porsches, where they're just so one-to-one and so natural. Obviously, there's an adjustment here because your ergonomics are going to be compromised, especially if you're taller. And the inputs are, again, more 90s. Low effort, but greater motion, right? So there's more motion to the steering wheel to get a turn, but that slower ratio, greater, longer throws to the manual transmission, more travel to the pedals as well. And even the clutch here, you can tell it's either been set up in a way, or it's towards the end of its life where the engagement point is quite a bit higher than what you might expect. But even that clutch has a good amount of feel to it. And you hop in these cars and very quickly you feel, it just feels natural to hop in and push the car. When the V10 kicks, baby. What a day, man. Civic Type R, Hakone skyline, Fuji in the background, clear day. Life is good. It's really incredible what Honda did back in the 90s with this Econobox, right? They tarted it up. They gave it a higher compression ratio. They gave it a higher redline to make more power. They saved more weight. You have this double wishbone suspension in all 4 corners, and the performance and the enjoyment and just the foundations and the fundamentals of the vehicle are so good that I think the experience of this is completely different from what you get in more modern Civic Type Rs. And I know I'm the odd one out. A lot of people are absolutely in love with the modern Civic Type R. And they say that it continues the legacy in a perfect way and it's so incredibly capable. And I get it. It is very capable. It is a performance marvel and an engineering marvel. But whenever I get behind the wheel of one of those versus a DC2 or an EK9, there's just no comparison for me. Yes, they're both manual transmission, front engine, front wheel drive vehicles, 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated versus turbo, McPherson strut versus double wishbone, midweight 3200 versus lightweight 2300. But if you can get behind the wheel of a DC2 Integra Type R or an EK9 Civic Type R, again, shout out NRT Rent-A-Car, code Jabal for 5% off, then please do yourself a favor and experience what Honda at its peak back in the 90s with front-wheel drive vehicles was really all about. My friends, let me know what you think with a comment down below. Much love, and I'll see you all in that next one.